Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to say welcome to the shared decision-making community, because it's a very tightly knit community, a lot of researchers. We know each other for many years, and I hope that we can see each other again and several times. So some of you came already to Lausanne, and there's going to be another meeting in 2 years. And so I'm a vice president of the ISDM Society, which is the society of this community of researchers. So welcome to the community of shared decision-making first. And thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I'm so grateful to visit Korea again. I was in Korea, in North Korea before. Yes, because I do Taekwondo. So I did Taekwondo in North Korea, which is very, very unusual, I know. So, but I like to see this other side of Korea. It's, the people are very welcoming, and I appreciate the honor that's being done to me. So this is my first keynote presentation tomorrow as a professor, so it's very, very important to me to be here. So I was tasked today to talk to you about patient decision aids. And so how I came to work on patient decision aid is also from implementation science, because I was trained first when I started research into implementation science. And in my projects, I'm in primary care. Okay, many of you in primary care, can you raise your hands? Primary care research, family medicine, yes. So not many, right? So it's much, much difficult to do also work in primary care, because you have less people in each setting. And so it was, is everything okay? Yes? It's like a robot in the room. So I did, and my mentor was a family doctor, and he said, you know, in primary care we have to make a lot of decisions, so you cannot do just one decision aid. So you have to do 8, 10. So my first project was 10 decision aids that I wanted to implement in primary care, because the family doctor has to meet so many decisions every day. So when you do a series of decision aid, you learn a lot, because you compare the topics, and then you say, what is common between all these decision aids and what is different? And so this was my first project. And then a second project, I did 8, and another project, I did 6 decision aids. So I became interested in the process of creating decision aids. So I'm happy to share with you this today. So I should be using this, I guess. So I have no conflicts of interest. So this is my home in Quebec City. Université Laval is the oldest university in French-speaking university in America. And this is my team. So I have a small team. We have 3 websites. So this is my first studies of decision aids. It's still on the website. And we have PADA. So I'm putting PADA here because what I'm going to present today is a training program about how to create decision aid, and it's also available on this website. So I'm not going to present everything that's on the website, so I invite you to go there if you want to know more. So I selected the topics that seemed to be interesting to you when I read your questions, more about implementation. So how do you plan a decision aid implementation project? How do you develop the decision aid? What's the process? Format and content. So format and content, it's less about implementation. A little bit it is. But so maybe I will skip this because I have not much time today. But you have the slides, and you can also go to the website if you want to know more. And you can open, these are videos, so you can open them in YouTube, and they will have translated in Korean. So you can have a subtitle translated in Korean, and you can check it out. So I'm trying to focusing also on implementation, but from the perspective of developing a decision aid. So first, what is a patient decision aid? You already probably know this, so I'm going to go through very rapidly. So decision aid is typically, I think, the working part of the decision aid is the place where you have all the options with the pros and the cons of the option. So it's not just any patient information. So it's really important that it presents several options, not just one, and that for each option that you have benefits and harms. So the decision aids are useful for clinicians because they allow them to have the information, the evidence at their fingertips. They also structure the clinical consultation. So this is why maybe sometimes you think it will take longer to do shared decision making, but maybe not, because if you have a decision aid, it helps to have a better conversation, better oriented conversation. It's helping the conversation to go flowy, easier. And they like it because they can distribute them to their patients, so the patient can be more reassured. They know they can have more information later and to read with their family. They're also useful for patients and their loved ones. So they can be used by patients before the consultation, if they get them before, to prepare. So that's, to me, is the ideal, because then the patient is really activated and informed. They can be used during the consultation because the doctor can present to the patient the decision aid during the consultation. But then afterwards, they can leave and make a decision in a later, sometimes in some situation, they can delay the decision and make the decision in a later date. And so they have the decision aid to help them reflect with their families. So I really introduce rapidly what is a decision aid, but there are criteria that define what is a decision aid. The criteria were developed by a group that's called IPDAS. That's a small, I think you like acronyms in Korea also, right? So this is an acronym that we use a lot, IPDAS. So the International Patient Decision Aid Standard Collaboration. So you have researchers that came together from all the world. It was founded in 2003, and its aim is to define specifications for tools. So it ensures the consistent tool quality and minimize the chance of the tool biasing the patient decision. Because what you don't want is the tool that would suggest to the patient that he should do one decision over the other. You want the tool to leave the choice to the patient. So the history of the IPDAS standards. So you see, this is the one we're working with right now, but they're a revision that's ongoing right now. So there are 3 categories of criteria, and you need to have these qualifying 6 criteria in order to be a decision aid. If you don't have these 6 criteria, then it's not a decision aid. And often I see decision aid, they're labeled decision aids, and they don't have these criteria. So these are the criteria. They should describe the health condition, problems for which the decision is required. They should explicitly state the decision that needs to be considered, describe the options available for the decision, describe the positive feature of each option, and the negative features of each option, and describe what it is like to experience the consequences of the options. So, for example, and this is a decision aid that I've developed to prevent depression in older adults. So this is the first page, and this is so you see here, depression in older adults. You have the problem. Criteria is okay already, just a small sentence. Choosing an options to improve moods. So what's the purpose of the decision? What outcome is so this is one of the criteria as well. Which one is it? So I don't have my notes. So what's the problem? And what is the decision? So the decision is choosing an option to improve mood. As simple as that. And then you have also all the options, a list of options. So later in the decision aid, you see the benefits and harms of each. So just wanted to show you how you can say that this is meeting some of the criteria. So it's very important to me. This topic is really something that I'm passionate about. How can you develop decision aids? So this is something I would like to talk to you about because I really like this topic. So you see, this is the process. It's very small, I know. So what I'm going to talk to you about today, I'm going to talk to you, how do you create a team? How do you plan implementation and the development process at the beginning? Before starting, you have to plan. How you fill content inside the tool. So I'm not going to talk too much about this. And I'm going to talk more about user testing. So once you have a first prototype, you need to involve users to ask them their feedback, so you make sure that your tool is aligned with their needs. And how do you implement it? So the team creation. So I defined three different part of the team. So the first, internal team, the main team. You have a project coordinator, scientific reviewers, sometimes they have an epidemiology background, and a statistician. Sometimes you can have 2 persons that do all these tasks, but sometimes you can have 5 people. The advisory committee, patient experts, clinician experts, healthcare managers. So these may not be necessarily patients at the moment, but they have experience and they want to help you in your project. These people know that it is a research project or a project to develop decision aids, and they're held to help. They're part of the team. They're not the patients themselves that are going to use them. They're people that are helping you develop them. And then you may have specialists, information specialists to help design the search strategy, graphic designer, translator, health literacy expert. So I work with this health literacy expert. I have people that are specialized in this topic, and they help me to make sure that the tools are simple. So you see, these are the different roles, and this is how they're involved that I show in the color. So the coordinator is the one that's there first. Then you have the internal team. And then here the advisory committee comes into the iterative collaborative process to improve the prototype. Then you publish. And then when you publish, the users have access to the tool. You can also, again, get their feedback during the process of distribution. So you can still continue to improve. And this is something that's different with implementation science. So implementation science is different from the other science because your intervention may change as you're going through the project. Now, sorry if I call it a project. So it's not like a lab. You don't have like the experiment and then it's, everybody get the same. So implementation science is not easy. It's difficult. So it's hard to talk about this today, but maybe I would invite you to read more the papers that are published in a journal that is called Implementation Science. So this is it's a field of research doing implementation science, right? So how do we plan for the decision aid implementation early? How do we, and what I want to talk about is how to integrate it in the clinical flow. So you have to think about the clinical flow before starting to create the decision aid, because this may change the decision. So if you know when you're going to implement it, you might want to address this question. If it's implemented later, maybe the question will be different. So it's important to already think about implementation at the beginning of the creation of the decision aid. So I describe it this way. Maybe Fritz describe it in another way, but I think we have the same idea, is that you have to think about there are different ways to plan the implementation. So I'm going to present you the logic model and the storyboard, and also how you can plan the development by using storyboard and user stories. So let's start by planning implementation. So you want to describe the purpose of the tool. What are the desired health outcomes? First, you start with that. It's funny, eh? You don't start with the tool. You start thinking about what you want to achieve, the same as you were saying. Who will distribute it? When, how will the tool be distributed? How will the implementation be evaluated at each stage? And what is its format? So all of these questions can be integrated into a logic model or roadmap where you have a logical flow of activities and what the intervention aims to accomplish, the link between program components and outcomes, and linkages between planning, implementation, and evaluation. So a logic model can be very, very simple with inputs, outputs, outcomes. So inputs are the resources you need, leadership, money, time, support, and outputs, what will come out of the program, and outcomes. So it can be simple, but it can be complex too. So this is a complex logic model. So you can have simple ones, more complex ones. So you can be very creative. I'm a very creative person, so I'm always adapting stuff. So this is a logic model, kind of, that I did for a project. So I describe here how we integrated the strategies, the implementation strategies to achieve the final outcomes. So first we had training. I developed a training program of 1 hour online. I describe here the description of my program because it's important. What was the aim of this training program? Then we had a tool that I called it was like a decision aid, but for the clinician. And then what I wanted the clinician to have in the end of this exposure. So he had the training, he had some paper-based information, and in the end, he recognized the decision point, and improved his knowledge and the benefits and harms of the option, and he had more skills to communicate and engage the patient. So this I can measure, right? So the logic model also allows to structure your way of thinking. So what are you going to measure? So then the clinician was ready for SDM, and then he distributed the decision aid to patients. So, and then in the end, the patient and caregiver would have these outcomes. So just an example of a logic model, it helps planning. Another team in Mayo Clinic, they use storyboard. So they have a story like this to help them make it more practical. How is the tool going to be distributed? What are these people going to talk about? So you can read it. I hope it's inspiring to you. So this is a very good team. They do a lot of good work, a lot of good science, implementation science, but even really good also RCT and very good studies. So then once you have your plan, you also have to plan your tool. So how can you plan the prototyping? So they also call it a storyboard, and I'm sorry that they called it the storyboard for the first part of my implementation plan, but also we can call it a storyboard to illustrate the visual presentation of your tool, the first steps in presenting the concept. So you have the images and text that are displayed and links between. So I'm going to show you because this is not very useful. So there's the storyboard and there's user stories. So user stories are the things that the graphic designer use when they design something. So I'm going to show you. So this is kind of a storyboard. This is a storyboard I use for my own decision aids. So I say, okay, in my decision aid, I will have first an introduction, then I'll have a list of options. I will have a list of each the options. Then after listing the options and the benefits and harms, I'm going to have a values clarity. So you see, this is the steps in my tool. This is just to do a sketch. And the storyboard can have you can show more details in some parts like this. And using this, it allows you to work as a team because you can present this draft to other people and everybody can discuss, and so you can collaborate because you have such a schematic representation of the content of your tool. User stories are a bit different. So this kind of things are used when you develop a website. The website designer, they ask you, who's the user of the website and what do they want to do? So you have to express what the user wants. And so this helps in the design. So A user story. As a clinician, I want to review the decision aid as continuing professional development, have access to the evaluation of the evidence, and improve my critical reading skills by using the description of the studies cited in the tool. So these are my tools. So my tools are not only done for the patients. I do them also because I'm interested in medical education. So I think it's also useful for clinical training. As a clinician, I want to review the decision support tool with my patients to identify their preferences for the different health options available. So this is the kind of user stories. As a patient, I want to know the full range of pros and cons of health options, clarify. So this kind of user stories is helpful to discuss in a team about your decision aid and get people feedback. So the decision aid formats, you can have printable, videos, internet, so interactive. I just have a list here of the different benefits and disadvantages of these different formats. The video are very good for people with low level of literacy, right? So even the website now, I think with AI, I think we can have maybe readers into the websites. That I think there's a lot of opportunities, and I'm asking my developers, I'm working with a website agency, and I'm asking them, I want to have a reader in my website, but they are not doing it. So I have to continue pushing because I think it's difficult to program, but there are plugins now. I'm sure it can be done. I'm not going to go into details of this. The website, if you want to do a good website, you need to do user testing. So that's why it's more costly, right? You cannot just do one website and then, okay, it's done. I know my decision aid is good. No, you have to test it because if it's interactive, then it costs more to do testing, right? So planning, development, updating, and sustainability of the patient decision aid. Sorry for the typo. This is something the researchers were not very good at, sustaining our development of decision aids. So first, I want to tell you a bit more about some of the documents that accompany a decision aid. So you can publish a protocol when you want to develop a decision aid. So this will be useful for your CV. But what I wanted to talk about is the business model. So when you do a decision aid, you can think about in advance the business model. So, and you can, I'm just going to come back to this, but you can also publish with your decision aid an evidence synthesis. So you can also, usually it's good that you have the people who access the decision aid can have access to all the evidence. So you can have a separate document accompanying the decision aid with all the references, and because the patients, they don't really like to have little numbers, and going to the references, they say, what are the number for? So you can just have a document beside. So I'm going to go fast now. So these are examples of protocols that present the development of a decision aid. So just go to the business model. So the business model is the main facets of the business of designing and updating the decision aid over a given period. So you can have a cost structure, revenue, partners to help you in the development and maintaining of your decision aid, activities, customer relation, distribution channels, and target clientele. So this is the business talk. We're not used to this, right? So it's tough to sustain the development of a decision aid. So this is what I wanted to talk to you about mostly today. So the user-centered design process. So when you develop a decision aid, there are two different forces that are fighting a bit each other. So the purpose of the decision aid is to explain the pros and cons, support the clarification of values, support deliberation. If you want to do everything perfectly, sometimes it goes against user experience. So maybe sometimes you have to do compromise. So when you test your tool, you see some things are too heavy. Maybe sometimes you have to make them light. And, you know, and sometimes you may need to do compromise, but the science behind what is important in the decision aid, it's always evolving. So you can bring it to the table and say, maybe we shouldn't do this, and maybe we should. So it's not a perfect science where everything is fixed. You can contribute and improve the science of doing the decision aids. So user experience are people's perception of your tool. The perception, attitudes, emotions, capabilities, limitations. And to maximize it, we must meet the needs easily and in a simple and elegant way. So these are the facets of the user's experience that I use in my studies. So when I do a study, I will try to see if my tool helps meet each of these facets of user experience. Value is a bit, in the end, do they want to use it? So if all of this is met, usually in the end it will be valuable. So I will give, if you're interested in knowing the science behind all of this, you will have my email address, and I can send you the references also in the end of just email me and I'll send you all the references. So key elements of users' experience of decision aids are simplifying the decision aid, using design methods that are user-centered, and you can use patient-oriented research strategies as well, and improving navigation. So I have some tips for printable and web-based decision aids to improve the navigation. And using a validated template. Like Karina is using a template in her study, so all the decision aids are using the same template, so it's easier to develop a decision aid when you have a template. It's already validated. So the user-centered design is very important. So it's an iterative process of evaluating users' experience in the real-world context of use. So when you first start your prototype, you may base your tool on the Ottawa Decision Support Framework, IBDAS, Expert. You don't have to, but you may. So suppose you start your tool and you want to use a framework. So you develop a prototype, but then you will ask user their feedback and submit it and change it and develop changes until you have a final version that is meeting user experience, having a good user experience. So user experience is part of the IBDAS criteria. It's one of the requirements. So this is the model that is going with the IBDAS criteria. So assessing, understanding user, developing, assessing. And you do this as many times as needed for the decision aid to be acceptable. So there are various ways of evaluating users' experience. You can use think aloud protocols. So do you know about think aloud protocols? Raise your hand if you know about think aloud protocols. Okay, that's good. So I'm glad that I asked, because I would not know if you know about this. So think aloud protocol is the person is looking at the tool and they read and they tell you, as they're looking at the tool, they tell you what the problem is. So they think aloud as they're using the tool. So of course, if they're reading, it's a bit more complex, but usually this kind of protocol is used with website. So the person is going on a website, clicking, oh, I don't find this. Why is this there? Oh, I didn't. So you see the person, the user, as they're using the tool, they express out loud their thoughts. So this is a good protocol. You ask people to think out loud throughout the reading, to verbalize what they're doing and all the ideas that come to mind. You can also use semi-structured interview, so you can ask them to read the tool and then do an interview. What do you think of the information presented? What do you think of the format? So we did this also, this strategy, and we asked people each section of the tool what they thought of them. So the introduction, do you like it? What do you think of the options? Then we go through the tool like this. And teach back. So I use this when I think people are low literacy. So if I work with older adults a lot, so you want to make sure that they understand. So you can ask them, what do you take away from this document? And so you think they're gonna understand what you wrote, but maybe not. So this is very revealing. Sometimes you think they understand and they didn't. So this is very good strategy to make sure that they understand. You probably use it with your students, right? The teach back. you ask your student, what did you understand? Oh, problem, they didn't understand, right? Questionnaire, you can also use questionnaires when you have a large group or you don't have a lot of resources, because qualitative work takes a lot of resources, but they're not as efficient. So I tested both. It's really not as good to get feedback about a tool. The strategy for patient-oriented research is an approach in which the people targeted by a research project take part in the research project. I don't know if you use this strategy a lot in Korea. It's getting a lot of momentum everywhere else in the world. In Canada, Canada has been at the forefront of this movement of involving clinician and patient early in the project. So I have a patient in my project, an older adult, and when I do the protocol, I ask my patient, the older adult, what do you think of the project? And she tells me if it's a good question. So she's part of the research team. Okay? Do you get that? So do you use this strategy here a little bit? Sometimes asking clinician, you're all clinicians, right? So maybe you have other clinical expertise as participant in your research team, but do you have patients also as member of the research team? No? You didn't think of doing that? So you can check this website that explains what it is, right? So the objective is to generate more relevant results. So individuals who are likely to use knowledge to make health decisions. I don't know what I meant. So the patient, it could be patients, public, clinicians, healthcare managers. So this is implementation research now is always with the experts that are the patient and the clinicians. They're always involved in the team. This way your implementation is more relevant. So if you want to engage a patient as a partner in your research project, so now I have some examples of ways you can engage them in the development of a decision aid. You can ask them their opinion of the topic or the question, the decision that has to be made. Is it a decision that is important to you? Do you think it's well framed? Also, you can ask them what are their priorities, or do they think the priorities are well represented? Or if you involve other patients to review their priorities. So usually when you do a decision aid, you will have a needs assessment, right? You will ask patients, a group of patients, what are their needs to make a decision? And you're going to try to integrate this into the decision aid. But you can ask your patient partners to revise this list of priorities to analyze the results of the project, to help you analyze this. So it makes it even more relevant. They can revise the text of the tool, the formulation of values, preference, priorities. They can help if you interview users to ask their feedback. You can ask the patient partners to give to help in the analysis. So I was done with the methods for development process. So this is the part I was thinking that I should skip because I don't have much time today. But I would just want to say that when I started doing decision aids, I found it was difficult to find good papers about how to do this. And so I'm really interested in graphic design. And so I looked at it from the perspective of graphical design. So I hope maybe you will like to read about this. So I'm just going to go quicker. I'm going to use this. It's going to take a bit more time, but there is a science behind this, but it was more difficult to find for me. I had to search because it was not obvious from the literature. So readability. So I would be happy to discuss with you about all of this if you're interested. So how do we assess if a decision aid is effective? So there are two essential constructs. So these are from a review it's a very, very important review of the effectiveness of decision aids. The first author is Don Stacy. So the two constructs to evaluate the effectiveness of decision aids is first the quality of the decision-making process, and second, the quality of the decision. So I'm going to explain this a little bit more. So the quality of the decision-making process, there are 5 dimensions. Recognizing that the decision needs to be made, feeling informed, knowing what's most important, discussing the preference of the patient, so it's a bit short here, and being engaged. So the decisional conflict scale and the control preference scale measure both the quality of the decision-making process, but they don't measure all the dimension. The preparation for decision-making is the one that measures the most of these 5 constructs. So it doesn't measure the feeling informed, but it measures all of these 4. So the constructs that are most valued by patients are the feeling informed and knowing what is most important. So these are important constructs to measure. Now, if we go to it's a bit quick, but at least you have a view of the different measures. So the quality of the decision is not the same as feeling informed. It's really the person is informed. So you need to measure knowledge. So usually the researcher will develop a knowledge test from the topic. So what are the options for this decision? You see if the patient knows more about the different options after looking at the decision aid. So do they identify this option, this option, this option? You know, it's really knowledge about this topic. The second dimension of this construct is the concordance, is the preference of the patient the same as the option that they chose. So is the option chosen exactly the same as the preference that they expressed? So there are ways to measure these also, concordance. So most of the tools measure knowledge. Most of the research about decision aids measure knowledge. They have a built-in questionnaire where you see, did the patient improve their knowledge? Concordance can be measured with the multidimensional measure of informed choice. So it's really a quick overview for how to measure effectiveness of decision aids. So I will talk also a bit about the barriers and facilitators to using decision aids, and some of them were mentioned by Karina before. So, and I'm inspired by the Ottawa model of research use. It's an old model, but I really like it. It's really simple. So you have 3 different types of barriers: adopter, innovation, and context-related barriers. So barriers to the innovation, and in the end, these are the barriers to using the tool. So in the adopters, you have two different types of adopters, the clinician and the patients. So if you look at the barriers according to clinicians, these are the ones that Karina presented. So I'm not going to go very in depth because she already did. But there are some really more specific to decision aids, so they can distrust the tool the content of the tool. They can question the scientific basis of the tool. The tools are not adapted to the local population. They're uncertain about the added value of the tool. Also, they may think that the patient prefer not to be involved in the decision-making process. They may lack interest in shared decision-making, and they may think that it's not their role to direct patient to decision aids. And as Karina mentioned, the disruption of workflow and lack of time. Also, they may think that offering options is not the best practice. So there are facilitators according to clinicians. So the training to use the decision aid is helpful. It's reassuring them about the quality of the tool, the confidence of the tool, the ease of application. The identification of a clinical leader is also something that's helpful in implementing the decision aid. Now, regarding the determinants according to patients, so this is also important, right? And this was a review by Nathalie Joseph-William, really useful, I think. It's a review of all the barriers, patient-reported barriers and facilitators to shared decision-making in general, not just decision aids. So here are some of the barriers and facilitators. They're all in the same slide. So fear of not grasping what is expected of them, perception that their opinion has no value or has value, trust, mistrust in the professional, power, egalitarian relationship between patient and professional, feeling that the professional is too busy, afraid of disturbing, feeling that the time allocated is insufficient, have several professionals involved in their care. This is a barrier. So there are several. I mean, I think it's been a long day and I hope you're not tired. I'm just, I don't know how much time. Oh yes, I passed, eh? So I'm gonna go fast. You can check them there are also barriers in facilitator that are contextual. So I'm just gonna go fast because I don't have enough time today for going through all of this. So these are also implementation measures. So I just wanted to show you that if you want to measure implementation success, it's not the same outcomes as measuring just effectiveness. So you have an intervention, you can measure the process, and then if it's effective. And so, for example, if your intervention is decision aid, then such an implementation measure could be the number of patients who receive the decision aid. So this is a process measure of implementation. And then there's the effectiveness that could be adoption of shared decision making. And so this resource here, I think, is the best reference to describe the different types of implementation measures. These are the measures for implementation. So I'm sorry that it took so long. So this is the ICANN SDM scale. So we always assess barriers and facilitators in a qualitative way. And I try to develop this measure to assess it quantitatively. So if you want to improve implementation, you can assess pre-post, if this has changed. And you will know at least if your process was improved. And this is a tool that I've created to help people develop decision aids. I'm trying to implement it internationally, helping some people in countries where they don't have as much knowledge of decision aid development. So the PADA tool is there to help people who want to develop decision aids, and it has a template also. So I invite you to go see the website, and I'm looking for people that want to validate this strategy So especially people who have already Cochrane reviews. I don't know if some of you are developing Cochrane reviews. So I'm looking for Cochrane review authors to develop decision aid from a Cochrane review. So thank you very much. So I have listed here a place where you can find references. I'm sorry for the time.